Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where I talk with CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of companies and organizations like YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, OpenTable, Axe Software, many more. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And I'm excited today to talk to Taylor Trusty. Taylor and I connected. We met at Startup Grind in Silicon Valley about a month or two ago, before the whole Corona craziness descended upon us and live events went by the wayside for the time being. We connected and met through EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, which we're both involved in. And Taylor is an entrepreneur, speaker, strategist. He's really passionate and honest guy. I loved my conversation with him, and I said, this is a smart guy that I got to bring onto the podcast so I can share some of his wisdom. He started several companies, most notably Blackstone Media, which is a digital creative and marketing agency helping brands such as Toyota Material Handling, Sonoma-Cutrer, Mercer to grow their business online. And he also sold that business in 2018. He's originally from Kentucky. He was named an emerging entrepreneur into the Kentucky Entrepreneur Hall of Fame, and now based in New York, and now running a company by the name of, wait for it, Signal Insights, which we'll talk about in a moment, how he ended up starting that new business and how he's working on that as well. So first, before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25 Media, which I co-founded with Jeremy Weiss, Dr. Jeremy Weiss, my business partner. And our mission is to connect you with your ideal best referral partners and customers. And we do that through our Done For You podcast solution. I'm a firm believer that some of the best value that's ever come to my life is from doing a podcast. Hands down, one of the best things. It's like a Swiss Army knife, a tool that will accomplish so much at once, will lead to great clients, referrals, strategic partnerships. You even get to talk to smart people like I'm about to do here with my friend Taylor. So if you want to learn more, go to rise25media.com and you can learn all about how to leave a legacy for yourself and your guests. All right, so Taylor, we connected at Startup Grind. You've got this interesting background. And we were talking beforehand, and you said that at a young age, you knew you didn't want to go to college. So you didn't end up going to college. And not just that, you ended up, you failed out of your freshman year in high school. Now first of all, let me paint a picture here. Taylor's kind of a taller guy. I'm about 5'10". You're what, 6'1", 6'2"?
6'4".
6'4". Okay. Wow. I really underestimated that. Got a nice button-down shirt, got the kind of Midwestern sensibility. You could pass for a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. What was it? Was it a young age? You're just like, I'm going to go run my own business. I don't need to do this schooling thing. What was that like? What was young Taylor like?
Yeah, that's a good question. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. He owned a sign company. My mom has always, for most of my life has worked for herself, and that had a big impact on me. I was a huge Bill Gates fan. I still am now for different reasons. I was really interested in computers. I was a computer nerd. Also, a lot of my life, when I was a kid, I thought I was really smart. Adults told me I was smart, and there was this thinking of, well, I'm smarter than this teacher about computers or technology or business or what have you. So maybe I don't need this. So I think at an early, in high school, a lot of it was arrogance, and I was a ferocious reader. So I read a lot. I still do. I read a lot. I just consumed a lot of content, consumed a lot of information, enjoyed learning on my own, and felt that I could do it better. Also, I really value, and still to this day, value experience over theory or over, I'm a very practical person. I like, well, how do we do this now? Mm-hmm. So I always erred on that side. And at least for me, school didn't provide a lot of that.
So what did you do when you failed out your freshman year? Did you get a job at that point?
Well, I mean, I repeated my freshman year, so I
Okay. So you
failed.
continued.
Yeah, I continued on. So I had 5 years of high school. Uh, yeah, I mean, I was playing like 7 hours a day at Counter-Strike. So I was playing computer games.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of that time was wasted.
Yeah.
I got it really good at Counter-Strike, and I ran this clan, which is like a gaming group in Counter-Strike.
Online or what was it? Or locally?
Yeah, all,
Okay.
all online.
Okay.
So yeah, and you know what's funny is that I was what 13, 14. I ended up meeting this guy in Detroit. His name's Sam.
This sounds like a scary story.
Yeah. So we met online. You know, we would play I don't know, a few times a week, and you know, we kind of fell out of touch. He ended up moving to New York, and somehow we got connected on Facebook. And then I don't know, 10 years later, 12 years later, I messaged him on Facebook and I said, "Hey, I'm visiting New York. We should meet." I'd never met him in person. I meet him at a corner. I thought we were going, he said, "Hey, let's go to Scotch tasting." So I show up at this corner and there's no Scotch bar. It's just a building. And he's like, "Oh yeah, come up to the 53rd floor or whatever." And I'm like, "Oh shit, this is an apartment building." And so I went up to his apartment. I was with a buddy of mine, and he said, "Well, somebody needs to tell your mom how you died, so I'm not going up there with you." But it ended up being fine. We're really, really good friends today. He's actually a member of EO. You know, so we're both these.
So you both done good. So at what point did you make the pivot from spending 7 hours a day on video games to generating income, a revenue at some point? The kind of the pivot into entrepreneurship.
Well, you know, I was spending a lot of that time playing computer games, but I was also spending that time learning how to program. I learned Visual Basic and HTML and JavaScript, early versions of JavaScript when I was 13, 14. So right around that time, the Counter-Strike clan I was running, I built our website, and that's what got me my first job as a web designer. So I got a job as a web designer at 15, and then I worked at Hewlett-Packard as a salesperson at 16. And then my last job was...
You're 16 years old and you're selling for HP.
Yeah, I was a retail sales rep. I was the youngest one that they had hired.
Wow.
So...
and are you
HR
beating the bushes?
know.
Are you going out and walking around, going to local businesses? Are you calling around? How are you doing that?
I was in retail stores. So I was in Comp USA, Circuit City, Best Buy, mostly those three. I was mostly in Comp USA. So I'd be in there and, you know, I'm 16, 17. I'd look 16 or 17. People are coming in and asking me questions about printers. And what's funny is that if you came in and you said, "Hey, you know, I'd really like a printer that's great at photos and blah, blah, blah," and an Epson printer was actually a better fit for you, I would tell you to go buy the Epson. I'm like, "Oh, well, actually, this Epson printer over here is really, really good." It turns out I wasn't a great salesperson for HP. I was a great consumer advocate. You know, I gave what I thought were the right answers. But when my manager found out, she got very upset. I guess they do secret shopping. And through a series of events, she ended up finding out. She's like, "Why did you recommend the Epson?" I was like, "Because it was the better fit." And she said, "Well, you can't do that." I was like, "Why not?" But then I went to a couple of semesters of college, failed all of those classes, and started an e-commerce company. You know, we three of us kind of worked at this e-commerce company. We were selling trading cards online, primarily on eBay. And we said, "Hey, you know, we think we're running this business. Why don't we start and, you know, leave and start our own company?" So we started in a garage, built it up. I ended up selling out to them, and then it went on.
That was your first business before you started Blackstone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then how did you end up starting an agency?
Well, when I sold when I sold out of Hobby Edge, I needed, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of money involved. So I needed to make a living. And so I went back to what I knew, which was how to build websites. And I partnered up, you know, I was doing contract programming work basically. And a guy that I was doing work for asked me over lunch. He's like, "Hey, do you want to start a new company? And we'll be 50-50 partners." And I said, "Sure." And it was as simple as that. He was the designer, I was the programmer, and we started building websites.
And you had a really interesting model of the talent that you brought into that business. First of all, you're based in Louisville, right? Louisville, Kentucky, where you're from.
Yeah.
You're from Kentucky. And so you recruited locally from the local university. Talk a little bit about how that was a differentiator for you guys.
Well, over time, you know, I'm still a fairly young guy, I think, but you know, at the time, a lot of my competitors were older people, and I really enjoyed speaking. And so if a university needed a speaker, I'd be there. At my peak, I was doing 50 or 60 talks a year in 2014, 15, 16. So, it ended up kind of building it up over time. But I would go in and I would speak. I would, and I don't think I would say the normal things that people say. Like, I wouldn't go in there and be like, stay in school. I would go in there and be like, maybe you should leave. So maybe they didn't enjoy it that much. But my feedback and my advice was very practical. And afterwards, people would always come up to me and they're like, hey, you guys hiring? And at the beginning, we were a small team, so we usually weren't. But we built a good reputation in the city. We tried to be fair. We were a fun place to work, et cetera, et cetera. And I think where you're leading into is that when I sold the business, that was a big thing that they wanted, was this talent pipeline, this reputation. We were in business for 12 years. And we took this slow. I took the slow approach. I didn't need to be a millionaire next week. Let's do the right thing and build a good reputation.
And at least up until recently, getting good talent has been a struggle, especially for a lot of larger agencies on the coast, in California and New York. And so these were, it became a talented pipeline that gave you good people and allowed you to charge, and make a margin, correct?
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. So we were, towards the end, we were competing with agencies outside of our markets. So we were, I had large clients and I was bidding against agencies in San Francisco and New York, et cetera. Mm-hmm. At the beginning, we were a very, very small shop with small clients and small prices. And so it was all local. But over time, as we slowly grew and built our kind of repertoire, yeah. Exactly.
Now, you don't strike me as a bad salesperson now. Have you gotten better at it?
Have I gotten better at sales?
Yeah. Or do you stay away from sales?
No. So sales is my primary thing. Yeah.
You seem like you're good at it. So how did you get better at it and stop you just stopped recommending the Epson, but how did you get better at sales?
I would argue I was actually a good salesman for the Epson. bad for Hewlett Packard.
Unfortunately, you just didn't get a commission check from Epson. They should have been sending you a check. Yeah,
exactly. So I started the business in 2006, Blackstone, and then we needed to make sales, right? And part of how I was a good salesperson up front is that I just read more than anyone else. So my theory was that if I was better equipped to handle any of your objections or questions, and normally those in my mind were technical. So why wouldn't this work? How is this better than that? It was very feature oriented and technical oriented. And so some people are impressed by that. Some people are like, wow, this guy's really smart. We should hire him. So that was how it started. And then it was just, I was pitching a lot. So at my, I was optimizing for meetings. So I was if you emailed us or you called us, you said, hey, I want a new website, I'd go meet with you tomorrow. There was no qualifying. It's like, could you actually afford us? Or how much do you want to spend? How much do you think a website should cost? So if you said that, I'd drive out to your place, and I'd come meet with you. And then, halfway through the meeting, you'd say, okay, I was thinking $600. And it's like, crap. So over time I get better at the filtering. But the value of that was I got better, and I got just piece by piece, every one of these interactions, I really stumble. That did not go well. Had a lot of very, very bad experiences, walked out of offices, all of that. So I'm a big believer in just do it over and over and over again. And hopefully get a little bit better each time.
Right. At what point did you get involved in EO? And for those who don't know what EO is, which I've mentioned many times on this podcast, so they probably do, but give a little overview what EO is and why you ended up getting involved in EO. We'll start there.
Sure. So I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, like as you mentioned. I always wanted to leave. And as the business grew, so we get to 8-10 employees, right? I used to have a business partner. I bought him out in 2010. So now I was the only owner. I realized I'm trapped. I've built what I thought was a success, but it doesn't achieve what I actually wanted. What I wanted was to live on the coasts. I wanted to live in California, like you, or here in New York. And I realized that this business will never serve what I want. And I'm comfortable here. And I had a great car and had really nice apartment and had all these things. Had very, very nice office. All of that. I made a lot of money, but I realized that those things weren't actually what I wanted. And when I looked at when I was a kid, or what I thought about what I want to be when I grow up, it wasn't owning an agency. And I have I have a lot of agency friends. I have a great deal of respect for people who run agencies. I did it for a long time. I wanted a way out, and I had no idea how to do that. I didn't know. I didn't have any friends who had sold businesses, especially ones like mine. So that was a real challenge. And coincidentally, I went to live in New York. So I started splitting time between Louisville and New York. I started just flying up here now and flying here. And I would just go to networking meetings. I would just go there and make a fool of myself. And I ended up meeting this guy. His name's Joe. And 6 months later, he called me and out of the blue. And he goes, "Hey, Taylor, do you want to sell your business?" And at the time I did, but I was like, "No, why?" And he said, he goes, "Oh, well, I'm buying them and blah, blah, blah." And then he said, "Okay, well, if you don't want to sell your company, you should join this thing called EO." And I said, "Well, what is that?" And then so then while we're on the phone, he fills out the, referral form, and there was no EO chapter in Louisville, and I didn't know what it was. And I went to the one in Cincinnati, which is about 2 hours away. I showed up knowing nothing about it. I sat next to a guy who I'd been there for 5 minutes. This is over lunch. I sat next to a guy who goes, "Do you know why I joined EO?" I was like, "No." And he said, "Because nobody in my life knew what it was like to have 2 or 3 mortgages on my house. I couldn't tell my wife that. No one understood what it was like to sell a big project, or no one understood what it was like to lay off 3 employees. And I needed a group of people who would support me in doing that." I was like, "Whoa, this is great." So then I joined, and that was 5 years ago.
Wow. And what have you gotten out of it?
Oh, I could go on for days. I'm a big evangelist of EO. I traveled all over the world with EOers. After I sold my business, I traveled, went to 28 different countries, a lot of them with EOers. I would not be living here in New York without EO. As part of EO, I was able to articulate this concept of, I want to live in New York. Whereas I couldn't tell my Louisville friends that, because they're like, "Oh, you think you're too good for us?" That was something I heard over and over again. Couldn't tell clients that. They'll run from you. And so I could say that in forum and express that, and I'm in a Cincinnati forum. So basically, if I succeed in this goal, I will be leaving this forum, which is something challenging and difficult to say. But I said that. They supported me. I had a meeting with a guy who was in my forum. He invested in this company. I had a meeting with him earlier today. So I was able to move to New York for 2 years. I split my time between New York and Louisville. So I flew back and forth every week. I was always flying.
How did you figure that out, by the way? That seems like a challenge. How did you make that work?
Well, I'm not sure I did make it work. Over time, it just destroys, friendships and any kind of relationships you have, because nobody wants to invite you to anything, because no matter what city they think you're in, you're never near them. So I did it because I wanted to do it. I thought of myself of, a successful person travels a lot. That was this thing in my head. And so I just optimized my life to do it. And I would, the worst day I flew 3 times in one day in this 24-hour span. Wow. So it spanned an evening, but, and I thought I was cool. I was like, "Ooh, I'm like a consultant." So that was, I had an apartment in Williamsburg and Brooklyn, had an apartment in Louisville. I had two or three sets of everything. I had clothes in New York, I had clothes in Kentucky. I could leave on a whim. I had a car in Kentucky. It was always at the airport. It was expensive because but it worked. The goal was to transition slowly to New York, and that's what I did. So over time, slowly spent more and more time, and then got rid of the Louisville apartment. And
then the opportunity to sell the business comes along. And how did that consummate? What was that like? Was it quick? Did it take a while?
Yeah, it took Took a lot longer than I thought, which I think is very common amongst people who sell businesses. I basically stepped out of the company in 2017. I was the business was really based in the Midwest. All my clients were there, the employees were there. I had somebody running the business. We had a good year in 2017, and she came here to New York, and she said, "Look, this guy who I knew, I had brought in as a friend of the business. He's interested in selling. Would you be interested in buying? Would you be interested?" I was like, "Yeah." So I flew like 2 days later to Nashville to meet with him because he happened to be in Nashville. And like I said, I optimized for flying anywhere. So I was like, "Yeah, I'll come to Nashville to meet with you." So I flew down there. We went out drinking. The next day he said, "We'd be interested. Here's what we think it could look like." I said, "Great." The next week I was going to be in Europe. So I flew to Europe, and I was in Paris in front of the Eiffel Tower when I was on the phone pacing in front of the Eiffel Tower when he confirmed the deal terms. And then we verbalized the letter of intent. That was in April of 2018. We actually closed the deal August 31st. But that, over that time period, so those 6 months or so, it was it was not a fun time, and I can help anybody who's going through some type of experience like that. But due diligence is not a good time. And it really exposed, what I thought was a successful business under due diligence looks like a piece of crap. It's like, I made that stupid decision. We had this, et cetera. But, at the end of the day, it got done and I was able to move on. There was no non-compete. And I also did not have to transition with the company. So I signed it here in this apartment at 6 p.m. on Friday, August 31st. And that was it. I was done.
And you were done. No earn out period or anything like that?
Nope.
Wow.
And part of it was I wasn't involved. I had not really been involved in the business anyway, the prior, 12, 16 months or so. But yeah,
so
that was very strange.
How did the team take it then? Did they know about it in advance, or did it make a difference since you were kind of removed?
Yeah. So I flew along with the CEO of the acquiring agency, who I was friends with. We both flew into Louisville, and we told the team in person. And we did kind of a town hall. People asked questions. And so it was announced to the team. I also announced it to clients, which I think frankly was probably a mistake. I think announcing it to the team was also a mistake. As early as I did. I mean, we did it very early.
Oh, you
probably
did?
in April or May.
So not after it happened.
No. Yeah, it was during due diligence. I mean,
okay.
I introduced them to my largest client, Toyota, during due diligence. So, I made a lot of mistakes, but
yeah,
it worked out.
Yeah. And then you move on. So you start Signal Insights. How did the next business, how was it influenced by your previous businesses? What kind of decisions did you make about this current business that you have inspired by what you'd learned?
Yeah, I wanted a business that was not dependent on people. I wanted a business that had recurring revenue. And ever since I was young, I wanted to run a tech business. So I wanted to really have a software company. Mm-hmm. And my last business, Blackstone, we created some software. We ended up spinning out a separate LLC. We raised some money from a VC firm. I put some money in. So I kind of had a little taste of it. And I said, I'd really like to give this a try. And we had this concept for competitive intelligence. We called it, what do we call it? The Hound. Well, one of them we called the Hound, and then one of them we called Blackstone Intel. Very good branding. And that was in 2013 or 14. And so it was always in the back of my head. I put it on the shelf because it just wasn't the right time, but it was always in the back of my head. And so when I sold Blackstone, I thought maybe I could find a way to make this work. And then, I was reaching out to my network. I got introduced through a former client to this guy, Keith, who's one of my co-founders now. And we met up, and then things went on from there. He had sold a software company. He had investors who were interested in putting money in his next venture. And, I was really, really fortunate that things just played out in a very, very nice way. What I will say is that, I sold in August of 18. We started, so for about a year, I was in this real deep funk. So sure, I traveled the world, had a great Instagram. It looks like a lot of fun. and it was. But also in the back of my head, I felt worthless. So it was, Blackstone was great, had a great reputation, did well. But what was that, just a one trick pony? Like, am I actually a good entrepreneur? Because some of these other ideas I was playing with weren't working. People stopped responding to my emails, right? When I no longer had Blackstone. It was really surreal. Former clients, they would talk to me, but it was different.
Makes you feel like the relationships were more shallow, or they were only interested in you because of the company?
So some of them. I mean, some of them are really great. Like my relationship with Toyota, they signed with this business very early on. But some of them, it was that was strange. And it's also very strange to go from, being in charge of a company like you, where you have clients and you have this reputation and you have employees, and when you say you want something done, people have to do it. All of that goes away, and all of that goes away, and that power, which some of us are entrepreneurs for, and I didn't realize this, that was part of what I liked, all went away, really, really quickly. And so I had real trouble dealing with that. I had real trouble dealing with that.
Did you figure that you were going to start a new company? You just weren't sure when? Did you figure that starting a new company would help cure that problem?
Well, do you know what I thought would happen? I thought that, and this seems so strange to say out loud, I thought that I would sell a business. And keep in mind, my sale was an okay sale. Like I couldn't retire, right? I could travel and have fun, but it was okay.
Yeah.
So I still needed to figure out what I was going to do as my next thing. And so I thought that people would come out of the woodwork. I thought that people would come to me and like, hey, Taylor, you're we should start this company together. Or this is what I thought would happen. What actually happened was nothing. Like, what actually happened is that, some people said, oh, that's cool, you sold. What are you going to do now? And when I didn't have an answer to that, they're like, cool. And that's it. I thought that people would be beating down the doors. And I know how asinine that sounds.
Yeah.
Maybe you can empathize. Maybe we think we're pretty good at what we do and that people will want us.
They're going to be lining up outside like, okay, Taylor's available now, everyone.
That's and
I've been
waiting
waiting for this moment. Right.
They're like, oh, finally. But instead, nobody said anything. It was just gone.
Yeah.
And well,
it's a
really
slightly
worthless.
Different twist on what you do hear people who've sold their company, and frequently you hear they get depressed. You hear that all the time, right? That they expect it to be this moment of nirvana. It's nowhere near it. And so it ends up being disappointing, but it's an interesting different spin on the reality of what happened to you.
Exactly. And I don't think there are enough stories like this. Because if I had heard more people saying what I'm saying now, then I wouldn't have felt like such a loser. Then I wouldn't have, because I thought, well, maybe I'm really not this, smart entrepreneur. And I'm not sure I am, right? But it really took a big hit to my ego. So
what sorts of things did you do then? Did you remain active in EO? Did you talk to others who had sold companies to find out what they did? You said eventually you found your business partner. So what sorts of things did you do to come out of that?
A lot of talking to people in EO. I also realized that I started to get this reputation amongst, friends of mine and EOers of just like partying or of not a lot of business. And so what I realized is that some people in EO had never seen me as a business person. They'd only seen me as a guy who, was exiting his business or eventually sold. And so they never saw me. So in some ways, I don't think they ever saw me as like a smart person. They just saw me as somebody who, is fun. I think it was a lot of fun in EO, but there wasn't a lot of respect that came with that. And that was also challenging. I started to realize this after probably a year or 2 years. So it would have been in 2019, late 18. But I interviewed a number of people in EO who had sold companies. And one of them I'm having a virtual dinner with tonight. And they helped me a lot. So it was, Taylor, you know what you need to do? You need to go into the woods by yourself. You should rent a cabin and just go and journal. and just
Did
write and
Did you
figure
do
it
that?
out. I did, yes. So David, the guy I'm talking about, he told me that on like a Tuesday, and I got an Airbnb Saturday, and I left.
Mm-hmm.
So I went for 3 days, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was that helped. So that put me on this journey. Meditation and journaling helped a lot, but mostly time. Mostly time is what helped. I needed a year to decompress from the old business. Due diligence was not fun. I needed to just, admit that some things didn't go as I had liked, and I could
Yeah.
have made some better decisions, and just forgive myself for that. Be like, you know what? That's okay. It's time to move on.
And what was it like? I know, some of your past clients became clients in the new business. What was it like when you called them up and said, "Hey guys, I got a new thing.
Well,
I'm back."
Well, what's odd is that, there were kind of a couple of new things, right? So I tried to do this kind of consulting, and they were like, "Well, what are you consulting about?" And I didn't really have a product, and so it just didn't feel right in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them I'm reaching out to right now, like that's part of the campaign I'm doing right now. I mean, we just launched this business to the public in the last 3 weeks, so this is all very new. We've been in kind of private mode building out the product for the last 6 months. But yeah, for the most part, everybody's like, "Wow, it's nice to hear from you." Yeah, I mean, it's so far so good.
Yeah. And now, what are your thoughts on, well, one, how is the current economic climate and the post-COVID world we're in right now? How's that affecting your current business? And what are your further thoughts on how, business will change in the months ahead? And by the way, for those listening, we're recording this in April of 2020.
Yeah. So today's April 14th. So we raised money in this business. Signal Insights raised money
before the change. Yeah.
Last year, and so we weren't expecting to make revenue until April or May, up till this time frame anyhow. So in that way, we were fine. We were already a remote business. Those things were already set up. But now that we're pushing some sales, it is interesting because even companies that are doing well are afraid. They're thinking, we're doing well right now, but what if this goes on another 6 months? We won't be doing well.
Yeah.
I mean, even the best capitalized companies can't necessarily go a year without any revenue.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of it. The uncertainty is what's just really hurting from a sales perspective, but we can be patient, and so we're fortunate in that way. In terms of long-lasting effects, I mean, this is something I'm very interested in. I got really interested in the Great Depression, so I watched a ton of like hour-long documentaries. I would not
recently
recommend it.
You got it like during this whole crisis? Really? Talk about wallowing in misery. Like you.
Oh man,
You didn't watch Contagion, the movie, did you?
I did not. But I watched an hour-long documentary in the 1918 flu epidemic, and then I watched the Great Dust Bowl, and then I watched an opening about an hour-long thing. So 3 hours right in a row of depression.
Man, good times at your house, man. I'm watching Tiger King. I don't know about you.
Also watch Tiger King, but that. Part of what I wanted to see was what behaviors came out of the Great Depression. So how did people change? Because there was still business going on in the Great Depression, but what were the behaviors? Like how did people change? And there were a number of them. I mean, the Securities and Exchange Commission came out of there, FDIC came out of there. So this larger role of government came out of there. Social Security came out of the Great Depression. So we hear things like the New Deal and FDR, but what in the early parts of the Great Depression was actually Hoover who was the president, and Hoover was a staunch conservative. He did not want government. He didn't see the government had any role in the economy, and that was his belief. And so the economy further constricted as part of that. So regardless of how you feel on government intervention, it seems that the government's going to be more involved potentially. I mean, especially as they are right now. That seems like one big trend. The other is I'm really curious how this work from home thing will play out, whether more and more businesses will be working from home. I can tell you, and I'm curious what you think, I've had much better luck getting people on meetings. So they'll hop on a Zoom because they have tons of time.
Oh, it's fascinating. I mean, depending on who, if it's someone at Amazon, they're going crazy right now. But yeah, I mean, we're hearing from our clients that they're able to get in touch with people who they've been trying to get in touch with for months or years who suddenly have time on their hands. So it's a great opportunity right now.
It really is.
Yeah.
So the question is, will people buy, after
Right.
that? And I don't know the answer to that. I am, I think, much like you, very interested in how this affects the business climate moving forward. I'm a big reader of Matt Levine, who's a columnist at Bloomberg, and he talks about how if you compare this 2020 crisis to 2008, 2008 was really a banking and financial crisis. This is really a health crisis that then led to, but the banks are in much better shape today than they were in '08. So we're not hearing as a matter of fact, JP Morgan released earnings this morning and saw a 23% uptick in deposits. Think about that.
Interesting.
Quarter over quarter, 23% uptick in deposits. And
so people were pulling money out in 2008. Yeah.
Exactly. They were worried that JP Morgan was going to go under. And today what they're doing is they're pulling money out of treasury bonds and putting it in JP Morgan.
Yeah.
So they're almost seeing JP Morgan as more stable than the government in some ways.
Yeah. I've heard people say that '08 was kind of a great preparation for what we're going through now because the banks are so much more solid now. So we got that going for us, even if there are other things that are an issue.
Exactly. And so I'm very interested in how this plays out. And I hope for health for everyone. The unemployment really hurt. We haven't seen numbers like this in our lifetimes. So
it's crazy. Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, but, for a company like yours, then that means a more talent pool. There's more talented people out there who are looking for a job. Whereas, for a number of years there, it was so competitive to get good talent in place. A lot of companies were not happy with the talent pools.
Fully agree. I also think that, if some company, and this sucks to say, but if some companies are trying to cut expenses, that analyst that you're paying $65,000 a year to put reports together, if they could be replaced by software, businesses are going to be looking at that.
It's happening all over the place. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that goes to the point of how, you need to articulate your offer in a way that is relevant to the market, right? Articulate it in a way that is a cost savings for the clients you're going after now.
Yeah. And this is messaging we're playing with right now. Like I've been working on it today.
Mm-hmm.
Does that messaging work? And also, if I'm running, let's say LinkedIn ads, because everybody's on LinkedIn right now.
Yeah.
If I'm running ads, if those ads show up to the analyst whose job is at risk, that's not good.
Yeah. Right.
So it's figuring out what level, if the ad is about cost cutting, what level are you targeting? Is it CMO? Is it a CFO?
It's a great point because within an organization, you might talk to someone at one level who sees the value of your offer and appreciates it. And there's going to be other people within that organization who see it as a threat. Doesn't mean that it isn't a good benefit for that organization, for the company overall. But there are going to be people who are not going to be your advocate. They're going to be your detractor within that organization. So you have to be cognizant of that when you're selling.
100%. I mean, we're seeing that. I'm seeing that right now. Analysts are not our friend.
Yeah.
They see us as a competitor, especially right now. Everybody's scared. Oh, my Apple Watch just went off. They're worried about their job, and something like my software doesn't help that worry.
Yeah. Taylor, I know you're a busy guy and I want to let you go, but I'll wrap things up with the question I always ask, which is, let's pretend we're at an awards banquet, much like the Oscars or the Emmys. You're receiving an award for lifetime achievement for everything you've done up until this point. And what we all want to know is, who do you thank? Who are the mentors? Who are the friends? Who are the peers? Who are the business partners? Who are the former gaming competitors who you met online from a couple of states away, who you would acknowledge in your remarks?
Well, one is my grandfather. He's who owned this sign company. Big impact to my life. He passed away when I was 10. There was a guy named Bill Lehman who was a SCORE mentor, which is a fabulous nonprofit for retired professionals. It's free for anybody listening here who wants free mentorship.
Yeah,
it's called SCORE.
I've done a couple of webinars for them. Great organization.
fantastic, and just wonderful people. I had a SCORE mentor who worked with me at Blackstone for about 8 years. His name was Bill, and he unfortunately passed away in 2017. And it was a real honor. I was a pallbearer in his funeral, and a lot of the pallbearers actually were his SCORE mentees, which he just had this fantastic effect on people around him. A really giving man. He ran a software company and really, I think, influenced some of these things that I'm talking about now. And then also, I think that my mom and family had continue to have a big impact. The other thing is that I'd say that the city of New York has had a big impact on my changing as a man. Growing in a lot of ways. I moved here single, and I had never been walked out on at a date. I had, nobody has ever got up and walked out of the room. And that happened here more than once. And so things like that helped me to grow have just had a tremendous impact in my life in addition to the people.
That is great. So, well, thanks so much, Taylor, for doing this, and tell everyone where they can connect with you or learn more about you.
Sure. Well, I mean, thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and you're a great interviewer. You can read more about me at taylortrusty.com, TRUSTY. All the social media and info is up there.
And Signal Insights is the name of the new company. So best of luck with that. And thanks so much, Taylor.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.